Hello, friends. Here we are with episode 40. Wow, the big 40. I wish I was 40, but that's not going to happen
Me
soon.
too.
Yeah, you too. Anyway, it is episode 40, and wow, things are taking like a strange turn at DIC back in 1985, 1986. It was kind of like 44 BC in Rome in March, as they neared the Ides of March. You could sense that something was up in Rome, at the Senate and the Forum, throughout the whole city. Nobody could kind of put their finger on it, but you knew something was up. And that's kind of what it was like at DIC. Things had taken a change. Jean was rarely there. He was spending a lot of time in France and in Japan at KK&D Studios. And, he always had such a big hand in everything creative that was going on at DIC. It was kind of odd for him to be off the radar. Andy, of course, was handling everything really well, but handling business and creative and everything. And it was kind of a strange time. And for me, especially, I had finished the Lady Lovely Locks and her Pixie Tales series. And I didn't have another series assigned to me, which, I wasn't a fan of that. But I had odds and ends assigned to me. I was like in baseball, a utility infielder, going from position to position. I wrote a couple episodes of Hello Kitty's Fairy Tale Theater. Gosh, what an adorable little series. It was really, really sweet, and I liked doing that. I wrote a made-for-TV movie called Meet Julie, about this doll that kind of comes to life. Kind of spooky, but it was fun. And we did a mini series called Photon. Back in '86, Photon was the first laser game project that was done, and they had arenas in different cities. And DIC got the rights to do a spin-off for a television series, and we did that. It was live action. It was really just. It was kind of, I suppose it was kitschy, but, low production values, really inexpensive. Howard Cohn was in charge, appropriately, for the guy that wrote The Barbarian Queen. He was in charge of the writers. There was him, Bobby, Logan, and me that were doing the writing, and Bobby and him crossed swords one time. I remember Bobby submitted a script, and there was this one scene in there, and Howard just said, "I just don't see what's funny about this." And Bobby, you didn't want to tell Bob Logan that something wasn't funny. But it was kind of a weird time. And then one day, you could hear what was going on by the reception area. Our writers' wing wasn't far from it. And there was a lot of chit-chat going on. It was kind of vocal. And Bobby and I came out of our offices, and we shared an office. And we went into the reception area, and Jean was coming in through the door with great difficulty, carrying this box that was like the size of my desk. It was this huge cardboard box. And Bobby and I rushed to him, to give him a hand and help him in with it. And we went into the conference room, which was right behind the reception area. And Jean said a quick hi to each of us. And, Jean's usually a really gregarious kind of a guy, but he was, I don't want to say standoffish, but it wasn't the Jean Chalopin that I knew. He kind of seemed like in a hurry to get done whatever we were doing. And still, the creative part of him always would come to the surface, and he'd say, I had something in this box that is going to change everything. And he made this dramatic deal about it. And as it turns out, he was right. And we opened up the box with him, this huge box, and inside is this electrical machine, the cover on it and everything. And now remember, again, this is 1986, okay? No internet, computers were just starting to get a handhold. And printers were like, again, the size of a German Shepherd. There were no little small desktop printers. They were Diablos that were like this big, and they go, with all the perforated sides on the paper. Gosh, this is stuff, most of you guys don't even know about. And John said, this is going to change everything. He said, this is a fax machine. And to be honest, none of us, Bobby and I and whoever else was hanging around, none of us had heard about what a fax machine was. I recalled a little bit from when I was in the military that we had fax machines in the military, but nobody had them in the private sector. And we carefully hoisted this huge machine out of the box, carefully set it on the conference room table, and John explained that you would feed your script into this one page at a time, and it would electronically transmit it to anywhere in the world that you wanted to transmit it to. And this, he was right. It was going to change everything, because in the past, when we had scripts that we had done, they'd get 4 or 5 done, and then we would do what we call a hand carry. You would take one of the DIC employees, and he would take a package of half a dozen or a dozen scripts, get on the plane, and he'd fly to Japan, drop it off, probably have a day in Tokyo to party, going to Roppongi or wherever the action was in Tokyo, and then come all the way back. And, it was an expensive thing to do, but not as expensive as if we had sent it by UPS to Tokyo, and God forbid the script got lost along the way and you're going to miss an air date. So we had to fly it by hand to Tokyo. I mean, it's laughable to hear about it now, but it was 40 years ago, which was a lifetime ago in tech. So here was this thing that was going to change everything. And immediately I realized I'm looking at my future. Now, the word around DIC was that this fax machine, are you ready for this? This fax machine cost between $12,000 and $15,000, okay? Kim's smiling over here. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was. When something new comes out, it's always the way it is. But it saved so much money in a year. We were doing 350 episodes of television a year. So all of those hand carries over to Tokyo tremendously would add up. So the fax machine was we located it in a closet, okay, off of the conference room. And there was one young lady in DIC that was appointed the fax machine operator. And she was the only one that could send a fax to anybody. So, that was like a moment of amusement that we have. And then John just disappeared again, and I didn't see him for a long time. And I was sure something was going on. And I got thrown off kilter. I'm used to bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. I'm used to story editing, working with writers, getting my rhythm. You don't take Seabiscuit or Man of War and have him running or her running in a race and stop in the middle of the race and, have a bag full of oats. That's not the way that it works. You keep the rhythm going. And my rhythm was broken. And it led to my making a couple of mistakes. One, I'm in the car with Andy. I forget where we're going. And Steve Waterman, sorry about that, Steve Waterman, who at the time was the agent for DIC. Great guy, went on to become a very successful producer in animated motion pictures. And Steve Waterman was in the car with us, and Andy was driving us somewhere. I don't remember what the meeting was at the time. And I had just sold a screenplay to Taft Entertainment, which was a pretty influential studio at the time. It was a real studio. And I'm proud of it. And I mention it. I just said, oh no, they took an option. I mentioned, Taft took an option on my script, The Leedsville Murders. And Steve Waterman was really impressed with this. And I noticed Andy didn't say nary a word. And in retrospect, I realized that, here Andy was paying me close to 6 figures a year between my salary as senior story editor and all the scripts I'm writing on the side. And if I was in his position, I would not be enamored of the fact that I'm paying somebody all this money and they're doing work on the side. I would never do it when I was at DIC. I would wait until I would get home to write. But nonetheless, I'm a staff employee, and, it just, looking back on it, it was a gaffe that I said that. And then a couple weeks later, there was a really, really good director named Richard Reynos, tremendous body of work that he had at DIC. And there was a series that came up called, long before the real Space Force came into operation, it was called U.S. Space Force. And I think Robbie came to me, or Lori, and wanted me to be the story editor on it. And Richard and I, for some reason or other, I don't know why, but there's some people, I'm not being derogatory, you just don't click with them. And I just didn't click with them. And I told Lori, I just don't think it's for me. I look back now, I'm turning down a series. I had told this gal from merchandising that I didn't want to do the Captain Crunch thing. I'm blabbing to Steve Waterman in front of Andy that I've got this show going on, this feature film that I sold. And I'm getting all these little projects. I had a development project for Andy for Beverly Hills Teen Club, which I really enjoyed. It was a cute show about these affluent high school teenagers, and their desks in the classroom are like their Louis XIV desks that they're sitting around, and they're chauffeured to school. And then I did development for Maxie's World. I wrote series Bibles for both of those shows. But I'm not getting an ongoing series going. And I'm not the only one at DIC that feels that there's something in the air. And when we get to the next episode, I'm going to tell you exactly what it was that was in the air. And you remember that I talked about the Ides of March, and we know what happened to Julius Caesar back then. So, Jack's tip jar today is zip it, okay? Don't be blabbing about stuff that's not going to score you any points, and be careful of turning work down, okay? So anyway, the next episode will be interesting for you guys. Please check again, subscribe. It's important to us. That's going to keep our little vlog going, and like us. Really appreciate it if you would do that. And I'm happy for all of you following us, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.